We're here with Dennis Smith, Buff Smith, and Hensman. What a great afternoon! This will begin our architect series, and we have a few questions. And Dennis has been gracious enough to show us around this great house, which was your first design work as a student, not as an architect. That's kind of how it went?
Well, I had graduated actually from USC about 1960, but before I went in the Army, which the draft was on my tail at that point in time, after 6 years in college, I designed it for my parents and actually lived in it for 6 months. I was here before I went off.
Prior to shipping out?
Yeah.
All right. And when did you know you wanted to be an architect? Were you born and you started scribbling, or how?
Well, actually in kindergarten, I remember I'd get these big blocks, really big ones, and I'd stack them up and make a little structure, a little house or whatever, and put a roof on it, and I'd go crawl in. And, I'm just kidding. Actually, I zeroed in on architecture when I was in high school, probably my senior year. I had a drafting class, which I enjoyed, and in those days, this is the 50s, they allowed you to take elective classes. It wasn't all college prep. So, and I enjoyed it. And the final project the assignment was to design a little house, draw the floor plan, elevation sections, and I loved it. And my dad was a structural engineer, so I knew about building and plans and stuff like that. But I wasn't that great in math, and I thought this is for me. So I went to USC, and at that point in time, SC was the best school, actually probably the only school in Southern California of architecture, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I'm very thankful that I was there.
Right. USC produced an amazing amount of architects, and in the mid-century, so to speak.
Right.
And Cal Straub, was he one of your professors?
Yes,
there?
Actually, all three of them were my professors at various. The first, second, and third year, I had one or both of them, and at the same time, and they had a profound influence on me. Their completed projects and their teachings not only affected me, I think it affected a whole generation of architects, really.
That's for sure. Now, Buff and Hensman, they were. Do I have this right? Were they also sort of student teachers at that time?
Yeah, they were actually teaching, and they weren't licensed, but they brought them in as assisting, and then they were actually teaching, and they were all also competing in a way with Cal. He had his practice, and he was of course a full instructor at that point. So they decided, rather than compete for the same work, why don't we join forces, which is what they did. And that's when a great deal of this wonderful architecture was produced. And then Cal, in I think '61, went to Arizona and taught and practiced there. And then Buff and Hensman, the firm then became back to Buff and Hensman, and then Buff and Hensman Associates, and then ultimately Buff, Smith and Hensman, and so on. Mm-hmm. So, but that's where it all started. It was being in the right place at the right time.
Boy. Now, of your buildings, is there one that you feel is really quite groundbreaking or different or novel or unique from the rest?
Is the firm you're speaking of? I would say, well, my favorites probably are the case study houses. We had 2 of those, and we won over 30 AIA Design Awards, and every one of those things was significant, and they're great architecture. I can't really put one above the other. I mean, for the program at the time, they were tops.
Right. Now, beyond the design that you did, I think you're also recognized for the use of materials that were perhaps not used before you used them in construction. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Well, that's true, particularly in the case study 20, which is, I'm sure you've seen the iconic picture of the vaulted and the lady and the man sitting in the chair and the round fireplace. That one's almost as famous as Pierre Koning's one with the 2 women sitting out in the end of the cantilever, and we battled back and forth. Actually, the last one, they got the case study 20 in, and Koning's on the back page, usually the other way around. But anyway, the case study 20 was really forward thinking and using pre-stressed prefabricated plywood panels
Right.
and pressing them in a vaulted shape and spanning distances.
Right.
And the beams were box beams. They weren't solid. They were plywood sides and a top member and a bottom member. And so that was all pretty forward thinking. Douglas Fir Plywood, cooperated with that. And we did several projects. The MC Gill project, which was my first house as a draftsman for Buff and Hensman, it was a prefabricated plywood panel, sandwich panel, 4 foot by 8 foot. And MC Gill manufactured plywood components, ended up providing all the cargo liners for every Boeing aircraft that's flying. That's why they're the big corporation that they are. But back then he wanted to use his product and his expertise in his house. So we, again, used this prefabricated sandwich panel thing. And the building is nationally historically registered now.
Mhm.
And his current wife has kept it up beautifully and landscaped it and so on.
Boy.
So that was kind of ahead of the times at that point.